"That night," she said, "we should slow down." And I said, "Then say it like you mean it." I still remember the way the words felt sharp and soft all at once, like a glass you shouldn't touch but can't help brushing your fingers against. I was leaning against the counter at Marlowe's bookstore, my hands gripping the edge like it would keep me from tipping over under the weight of something I didn't understand. She walked in exactly like she always did, late afternoon, the sunlight folding her hair into molten brown waves that shimmered against the dust motes in the air. She had that way of moving that made you notice the pauses between her steps, the little sways, like she was in conversation with the world even before anyone spoke to her. I had known her for weeks in the sort of way you know someone when the world keeps slapping you into proximity. She was mid-40s, sharp-edged yet soft in the right places, the kind of woman who made a space feel smaller when she entered it. Not because she took it over, but because you suddenly realized you weren't alone anymore. Marlowe's had become our accidental meeting spot. Me shelving books, her browsing history sections that didn't even exist, just to catch me looking up from whatever stack I was organizing. That day, she asked a question that wasn't really about the book she was holding. "Do you think people ever really change?" The corner of her mouth twitched, like she was daring me to answer. I didn't answer. I just tilted my head and met her eyes. The pause stretched long enough that the ticking clock above the counter sounded obscene, like it was mocking the unspoken words between us. I watched her fingers brush the spine of a leather-bound edition, deliberate, slow, and then, without warning, she leaned just a fraction closer, enough that the smell of her perfume, earthy and warm, nudged the nerves along my arms awake. My chest tightened. I hadn't realized how much my body noticed the little things. Her hair fell just across her cheek, the kind of messy elegance that makes you want to reach out and fix it but know better than to. Then she smiled. A small, fleeting thing, but enough to make me feel like I'd just been handed a secret. And I realized she was watching me as closely as I was watching her. That small electric hum in the air was mutual. Nobody said anything, and yet, somehow, we'd said more than words could manage. It wasn't romance. Not yet. It wasn't supposed to be. It was the soft friction of two people orbiting closer than they probably should. Each step calculated yet reckless, careful yet burning a little. She turned, still holding the book like a shield, and murmured, "We should slow down." The words were polite, measured, almost protective, but the glance she threw over her shoulder had an edge I couldn't ignore. So I said what I thought, reckless too. "Then say it like you mean it." Her laugh was quiet, a little startled, and I wanted to reach across the counter and see if she would really look at me then. The way her eyes lingered just a moment too long on mine. But she just tucked the book under her arm and left, leaving a warmth in the air where she had been. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. The next day, I found myself back at the bookstore even though I told myself I had no real reason to go. She was there again, crouched by the clearance table, tugging at a stubborn stack of books that had somehow collapsed. I offered to help, my voice catching slightly when I spoke. Helping her felt both natural and somehow illicit. She laughed softly, a sound that should have been comforting but instead made my chest ache. "You're too kind," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. There was a faint tremor in her fingers, though she tried to hide it, and I noticed, immediately, the little quiver in her hand, the way her shoulders stiffened as if she'd been carrying too much for too long. Something about it pulled at me, a mix of protectiveness and guilt because I knew I shouldn't care this much. She wasn't mine to worry about. She was fresh out of something I couldn't name. Maybe a relationship, maybe a season of life that left her wary. She didn't volunteer the details, and I didn't press. I could feel the boundaries forming in the space between us, invisible walls that neither of us dared to cross. Yet every shared glance was a small violation. "Could you stay a little longer?" she asked, almost offhandedly, but there was a hesitation under the words. She glanced up at me, those sharp, perceptive eyes catching mine before flicking away like she was embarrassed to be seen wanting anything at all. I froze, my hand still hovering over the books. Her voice wrapped around me in a way that made my skin feel too warm and my thoughts too loud. I wanted to say yes, more than yes, but the words felt dangerous, reckless, like admitting something I shouldn't. I could feel my pulse in my throat. She brushed her fingers against my arm while adjusting the leaning stack. The contact was brief, casual, accidental, but not really. My body remembered it long after. The soft press of her skin leaving a trace that my mind refused to ignore. I caught myself staring at her, noticing the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the gentle slope of her jaw, the way her sweater bunched just slightly at her shoulder when she moved. Every tiny detail felt like a clue I wasn't supposed to be following, a language written in her presence alone. I almost said something then, something I shouldn't, but she laughed lightly again and returned to the books, and I realized I was trapped in the middle of wanting and knowing I couldn't. And still, when she looked up at me once more, just for a heartbeat, I felt the spark again, the one that wouldn't let me leave. It was late in the evening, the bookstore almost empty except for the soft hum of the heater and the faint scrape of a broom somewhere in the back. She was perched on a low stool, flipping through a notebook that smelled faintly of coffee and paper, the kind of notebook that seemed to hold all the secrets you weren't supposed to read. "You know," she murmured without looking up, "sometimes I wish people were simpler." Her voice carried a weight I didn't understand but wanted to unravel. I knelt nearby, stacking returned books, trying to make myself busy, but really trying not to stare. Her hand brushed against mine while reaching for a book. It was accidental, or at least she made it look that way, but the spark it left behind wasn't. My fingers twitched, resisting the pull to hold hers, to ask what she meant by those quiet words. I wanted to back away, to remind myself that this was wrong, but the moment was magnetic. Then, the phone on the counter rang, breaking the spell. She jumped slightly, startled, and I felt a pang of disappointment. Whoever it was, someone important or trivial, it had intruded into our little orbit. She glanced at the caller ID, sighed, and answered in a soft, businesslike tone, her casual mask slipping just enough for me to glimpse the vulnerability beneath. I wanted to retreat, to step back into the safe distance of the shelves, but I couldn't. Every time she let her guard down, even slightly, the pull toward her intensified. I tried to focus on the books, on the ticking of the clock, on the dust motes dancing in the low light, but it all seemed louder than it should have, all echoing her presence. She hung up and closed the notebook slowly, lingering for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Her eyes met mine, and there it was again, that unspoken electricity, hovering between curiosity and danger. I caught myself leaning closer than I intended, aware of how easy it would be to cross the line. I guess I should lock up soon," she said, but her tone didn't match the words. There was hesitation, almost a question, in the pause afterward. I nodded, my throat dry, hands still frozen on the stack of books. I wanted to leave, to flee the intensity building in the dim light, but part of me, the part that knew better yet didn't care, wanted to stay. For a single, fragile moment, it felt like we were teetering on the edge, and I couldn't tell if we were about to fall, or if someone would stop us before we did.